wish that heaven was visiting hours, so I could just show up and bring the news that she's getting old. And I wish that you'd met her, things that she'll learn from me, I got them all from you. I just stay a while and we'll put all the world to rights. The little ones will grow and I'll still drink your favorite wine. Soon they're going to close, but I'll see you another day. So much has changed since you've been away. I wish that heaven were visiting hours, so I could just swing by and ask your advice. What would you do in my situation? I haven't a clue how I'd even raise it. What would you do? 'Cause you'd always do what's right. We just took a while until my worries disappeared. I'll tell you that I'm scared of turning out a failure. And say, remember that the answer's in the love that we create. So much has changed since you've been away. Visiting hours, and I would ask them if I could take you home. I know what they'd say, but it's for the best. So I will live life the way you taught me and make it on my own. Well, I will close the door and I will open up my heart. Everyone I love will know exactly who you are. 'Cause this is not goodbye, it is just till we meet again. So much has changed since you've been away.
Well, good afternoon and thank you very much for being here. My name's Mark on behalf of Jeff and his family. Thank you for coming to remember and celebrate the life of Rose Walker. Thank you to those who are also watching online. Thank you for being here to support Jeff, Clint, Lincoln, Katinka, Raquel and Jarrah. Laugh with them, cry with them and celebrate with them. Let's be honest for a moment. There's no denying our emotions. It's okay to be sad, to think, to ponder, and to be reflective. But I also encourage you here today, when the memory comes and it's fun, it's laughter, you're allowed to laugh. It's okay. To break out and to enjoy the humour and also the richness that Rose brought and continues to bring to our lives. I'm going to invite Raquel and she's going to come and share the eulogy. Thanks, Raquel.
Grandma was born in Smithton on the 18th of July 1954 to Harry and Dulcie Beattie. She was the younger sister of Billy, Wendy, Lexi, Coralie and Cynthia. Grandma was raised in Lylear, where her parents developed a farming empire. After attending Edith Creek Primary School, Grandma went on to Smithton High School. Having had a hockey stick in her hand from as soon as she could hold one, she commenced her sporting career. She could grow up to excel at hockey, as well as playing basketball. Grandma made the state under-16 hockey side, but unfortunately injured her knee in training and was unable to participate in the tournament. She played local and coastal hockey for Lylear, together with her 4 sisters, where they won many grand finals, as well as 2 state finals. These state final sides can be seen on the wall here in the Hall of Fame. Grandma's father, Harry, can also be seen on the wall here for his contribution to farming in Circular Head, as well as her sister Wendy for her sporting achievements. A few years later, and living in Launceston, Grandma won a 3rd state hockey final while playing for Turinga. Later in life, she started her golfing career and was a proud member of the Smithton Ladies Division 1 pennant team, who also won a state final. There wouldn't be many people who can say they played in 4 winning state final sides. This is a great sporting achievement. Upon leaving school, Grandma started working for her sister Wendy at the Lylear Country Store. Grandad called into the store twice a week on his butcher's run, and from this their relationship started to blossom at a very young age. Their love grew every day from then on. The song Perfect by Ed Sheeran, which will be played in today's service, was Grandma and Grandad's favourite song, as it perfectly describes their life together. Having finished his butchering apprenticeship and wanting to further his football career, Grandad decided to move to Launceston, and Grandma wasn't going to be left behind. There was no living together unmarried in those days, so they got married. Grandma was 17 and Grandad was 20. This was the start of their happy, loving and successful life together. Coming up on the 4th of March this year would have been their 50th wedding anniversary, illustrating their devotion to one another. When living in Launceston, this young married couple had little money, just the wages of a newly qualified butcher, some payments from playing football, and Grandma's wage from working at Myer. This allowed them to eat out once a week, choosing a 3-course meal lunch every Friday at the old Metropole Hotel. It just cost $1. The Metropole used to be opposite Myer in Lonnie. Otherwise, it was Vegemite on toast at their unit. There was no spare money for long drives. Their weekly trip was a Sunday drive to the dump, which is now the Launceston Hockey Centre. Grandma certainly made up for this cheap lifestyle in her later life, with wining, dining and travelling being very high on her priority list. After a year in Launceston, they took the gamble on moving to Melbourne. Grandma gained employment in a shoe store in the city, while Grandad completed his meat inspecting course. This was a memorable move, as this is where their first child, Dad, was conceived. Grandma was so excited by her pregnancy, she shared the news with her work colleagues and subsequently lost her job. Something that would never happen these days. They returned to Launceston, where Grandad worked at abattoirs as a meat inspector alongside his brother, Uncle Ron, who was also a meat inspector. Uncle Ron was one of the main reasons behind their initial move to Launceston, as he convinced Grandad to play football with East Launceston and later do the meat inspector's course. They have both been eternally grateful to Ron and his lovely late wife Marge for their support and guidance through their young married life in the Big Smoke. In 1974, they made the move back to Smithton, as the Smithton abattoirs had just reopened and needed meat inspectors. This turned out to be another lifetime successful move together. Grandma returned to playing hockey with Lylear and Smithton, Grandad back to football with Irishtown. They moved into one of Grandma's father's old farmhouses out the back of Lylear, which they had to renovate to make it livable. In 1976, their second child Lincoln arrived and completed their family. They then purchased their first family house on Gibson Street in Smithton. In 1977 and 1978, Grandma and Grandad purchased McKenna's Milk Bar in Irishtown, which they worked for 10 years. The shop was open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, but allowed them to have a week off each year, which often involved trips to the Gold Coast with their young family. Grandma was always looking for a challenge and to do something different, so decided to become a hairdresser. Consequently, they sold the shop at Irishtown and bought a hair salon in Smithton. At the age of 30, Grandma commenced her hairdressing apprenticeship. In 1984, they took another risk and Grandad left the secure position of a Commonwealth Government employee to being an AMP life insurance agent. This turned out to be the turning point to their successful financial life together. Grandma, being the loving and devoted wife she was, backed Grandad wholeheartedly in this move and all the choices they made together to improve their financial well-being. Grandad was particularly proud when Grandma coordinated a nomination for the Telstra Small Business Awards. It further demonstrated her love, acknowledgement and thoughtfulness towards him. In 1988, they built their dream home on Brooks Road, just out of Smithton. Looking for a new challenge, Grandma decided to sell the hair salon and enter the world of bed and breakfast accommodation. They built their first cottage on their home property 28 years ago. This was soon followed by a second cottage, and with that, the Rosebank Cottage Collection was born. Their business continued to grow, having purchased another cottage on Goldie Street in Smithton, where they then pulled down an old garage out the back to build another, adding to the collection. In the year 2000, after the world didn't end as a lot of people were predicting with the turn of the century, Grandma and Grandad decided to buy the Dovecote Motel business in Stanley with Mum and Dad, who moved home to live in and run the business. Grandma wasn't finished yet and wanted to build another cottage on their home property, but Grandad didn't agree, believing they would be overcapitalising this property. Not to be stopped, Grandma negotiated with the previous owners of Dovecote to subdivide a block off the back to build her cottage. This deal eventually fell through, so Grandma, in partnership with Grandad, Dad and Mum, purchased the whole property instead. Their next venture, Horizon Deluxe Apartments, had begun. 5 completed units and the commencement of another 4 has transpired since. Grandma was very savvy at trivia and would get great enjoyment watching Millionaire Hot Seat most nights with a scotch in hand. 5 o'clock was always scotch o'clock time for Grandma. In another demonstration of her being up for a challenge, she decided to test for the show, and before long she was on our screens. Regrettably, the millions weren't to be won, but she was thrilled by the experience nonetheless. Grandma and Grandad worked hard, took risks, and enjoyed a successful business and family life together. Grandma loved to travel and was fortunate enough to see the world, having visited 43 countries and all the states and territories in Australia. Thankfully, COVID wasn't around then, although there were still quite a few interesting times and challenges. She met many wonderful people and saw many of the world's most notable landmarks. Grandma especially loved visiting Lincoln in Sydney. She would do this several times a year and they would wine and dine together. Lincoln's friends often joined them, who she admired and loved, especially Bernard and Sergio, who have travelled from Brisbane and Sydney to be here today. Grandma was especially proud of Lincoln's efforts after leaving home at age 16 to do a hairdressing apprenticeship in Canberra. Lincoln went on to work in Sydney, London, and on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. Grandma and Grandad were lucky enough to cruise with Lincoln out of Miami at the end of his contract. It was a special trip, but concerning at the same time, as Lincoln was heading back to Sydney and didn't have a job. Grandma was worried, but in typical form, Lincoln said, "Don't worry, Mum, I'll get work," and did just that the day after arriving home. Lincoln's travel experience drew him to working with Flight Centre and now in a leadership position with American Express. Grandma and Lincoln had several trips away together and enjoyed each other's company immensely. They had one special trip to New York where they got separated in a subway station and ended up in different parts of town. Lincoln, thinking Grandma wouldn't remember where to go, was very surprised when he found his mother waiting for him at the front door. Grandma was also very proud of the way Dad and Mum adapted to the partnership in the Stanley business, and how they have now branched out into similar ventures of their own. It was also a very proud day for her when Dad completed his university degree later in life and having recently been elected to the Tourism Tasmania Board. The highlight of Grandma's more recent years was the birth of her two beautiful grandchildren, Jara and me. She loved having us around and watching us grow to be loving, well-mannered young adults. She was so proud when Jara gained his building apprenticeship with Fairbrother and when I started my uni degree in nursing, both in just the last few weeks. Grandma and I really enjoyed long phone calls which would always start with the words, "Hi Granny, I'm bored," and then our long conversations would commence. Later, these phone calls were replaced with lunches and coffee dates. Mainly girls talk, but Grandma loved it when Jara would join us. She adored us both and would do anything for us. Grandma has been eternally grateful for all the empathy and love expressed by her friends and relatives, but especially from her surviving sisters, Wendy and Cynthia, her daughter-in-law, Mum, her grandchildren, myself and Jara, and her adored sons, Dad and Lincoln. Not to forget her loving and devoted husband, Grandad. Grandma, you suffered through 2 knee replacements, 2 hip replacements, and multiple arthritic problems to be finally struck down by the big C. Never once did we hear a word of complaint or even shed a tear in front of us. You always had the attitude, if you can't control the situation, just get on with it and play the cards you're dealt. We believe you were the strongest woman we've ever known, and we love you endlessly. No more suffering, a job well done. Rest in peace, lovely lady. You will never be forgotten and live in our hearts forever.
Well done. That was really, really good. Excellent. However, there's just one fact I'd like to check. You said that you've now grown up into be loving, well-mannered young adults. I'd just like to get some feedback. Oh, good. Right answer. We're going to watch the screen. There's going to be a montage now. And as we look at the pictures, there's going to be a song played called Perfect. And it's by Ed Sheeran and Beyonce. And this was chosen by Rose and Jeff. It's their favourite song, as the words virtually emulate their lives together. Thank you.
I found a love for me. Well, darling, just dive right in and follow my lead. Well, I found a girl, beautiful and sweet. Well, I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fell in love, not knowing what it was. I will not give you
dreams. I hope that someday we'll share our home. I found love to carry more than just my secrets, to carry love, to carry children of our own. We are still kids, but we're so in love, fighting against all odds. I know we'll be alright this time. Darling, just hold my hand. Be your girl, you'll be my man. And I see my future in your eyes. Well, baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass while listening to our favorite song.
When I saw you in that dress, looking so beautiful, I don't deserve this. Darling, you look perfect tonight. No, no, no. Baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass while listening to our favorite song. I have faith in what I see. Now I know I have met
An angel in Parkside,
and she looks perfect. I don't deserve this. You look perfect tonight.
I'm going to invite Clint to come to the microphone. He's going to share. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. You're about to see an example of where the guy who's written the tribute probably should have read the eulogy, because a bit of my stuff here is going to be a double up of what Raquel said so beautifully. Sweetie, well done. You've done a great job. Thank you all for coming today, everybody. I think it's very befitting that we find ourselves having this service here for Mum, and having this lectern right here, the photos that Raquel referred to. Mum's dad, Harry, Bertie, my pop, is in this photo here, overlooking proceedings, and the couple of photos here. Mum's in both of these photos in the Lollia hockey team, and in one of them with all four of her other sisters. So I think it's pretty befitting that we're here in this place. So before I get started on this tribute to Mum, can I just take the opportunity to thank everyone that has been so kind and helpful to Mum and Dad and the rest of us throughout this very difficult time. In particular, I'd like to thank Mum's GP, Dr. Thiru Mukamaran, up in Kui, the staff at the Cancer Clinic in Burnie, and a very special mention to the very kind-hearted nursing staff up here at the Smithton Hospital, who were just amazing for us all during Mum's final days. Thank you also to the many people who have sent flowers, cards, food, and numerous kind messages in the recent days to all of us. Thank you all. It's quite overwhelming to experience such compassion from so many people, so on behalf of all of our immediate family here, we thank you very much. Out of the many, many messages that we received, I'd like to share a couple with you now that I think are great tributes to Mum. My cousin Katrina wrote, her vibrancy and love for life overshadowed her illness and bellied her strength. Her stoicism was her gift to all who loved and cared for her. I remember looking up to her when she was a teenager with her painted fingernails, fashionable hairstyles and colourful clothing, and a husband who just adored her, thinking, well, that's the dream. I believe she lived a beautiful life filled with travel, sport, business achievements, and the joy of family outweighing everything else. I now know that truly is the dream. Katrina's dad, my Uncle Ron, up here, second row, he wrote a message that said, Clint, your mother was one of the toughest ladies I've ever met. She played golf with 2 hip replacements, 2 knee replacements, and after having had a back operation. She still played golf right up to a couple of months ago. We admired her never give up attitude. I'd like to add to Uncle Ron's comments and say that Mum was unbelievably tough and stoic. Throughout years of pain, from hips and knees, throughout this terrible invasion of her body by this insidious cancer, we never once heard a word of complaint from her. We would ask, how are you, Mum? She'd say, okay, with a smile on her face. It was unnecessary to hide a pain from us, but it was so admirable that she wanted to shield us from her woes. On a brighter note, I'd like to pay tribute to this lovely lady, as numerous messages referred to her as, by talking about one of her greatest passions, holidaying. And you'll forgive me for more and more photos coming through here. This is just regular on the TV at Mum and Dad's house, by the way. Mum's travels started when she was 13, when Nan took her over to America to visit Auntie Lexi and Uncle Michael after their marriage a little while before that. They were living there. They visited LA, Disneyland, and even took in a proper bullfight in Mexico. Only 4 years later, she married Dad, and the travelling really started. Over the years, their travels went through different phases. In 1972, for their honeymoon, they went to Queensland for their first lavish tropical holiday. The first of what was to become many, many trips to the Sunshine State. They took Lincoln and I to Surfers Paradise a few times when we were young too. Mum and Dad's first overseas trip together was in 1988 when they went to Hong Kong and Phuket for the first of several international AMP conventions that they travelled to. They sometimes tell the story of the nerve-wracking approach into Hong Kong's infamous Kowloon Airport, rated 6th most dangerous in the world at the time. During this period, they travelled all over Australia, well, to places within an hour's drive of an airport at least, because there's one thing neither of them like, and that's a driving holiday. One story Mum loved to roll out was the time that they are staying at the Sofitel Hotel in Melbourne with their friends Robin and David, who I think are here somewhere today as well. Welcome. The West Indian cricket team was staying there at the same time. There was a knock on Mum and Dad's hotel room door. Some bloke who looked like a cricketer asking if he could use their toilet because he'd been locked out of his room by his roommate. Well, Dad said, "Who are you, mate?" "What's your name?" "Brian Lara," he said. "And it's Viv Richards next door who's kicked me out of my room." So they thought they better let the best batsman in the world at the time in to come and use their loo. They've got a nice photo to prove it too. That's of Mum and Brian, not the loo. I think that photo is popping up in this here somewhere, I think, as well. Anyway. When Link and I were in our mid-teens, they took us for our first overseas trip to the very fancy Nusa Dua beach resort in Bali and then on to Singapore. On that flight home, both Lincoln and I ate a dodgy chicken sandwich and spent the whole 10-hour flight throwing up, which I'm sure was just as bad for Mum and Dad having to look after us the whole way home. Soon after this, Link and I both left home and Mum and Dad were free to step it up a notch. Queensland? You bet. Port Douglas, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and just about every island on the Great Barrier Reef with a flash hotel and preferably a swim-up bar. Hamilton Island, Hayman Island, Dunk Island, Lindeman, Great Keppel, South Mole, Magnetic, they've been to them all. The next phase of this odyssey was when they again turned their attention abroad. In '97, they came to Europe to visit Tink and I. We had a rendezvous set to meet in the front of the post office in central Vienna. Turns out the post office took up a whole city block and the front door wasn't too obvious. There we were, Tink and I on one side, looking for them, meanwhile Mum and Dad are on the other side looking for us, and then we started chasing each other around the block. This was the day before mobile phones. So. Anyway, we found each other and we had a great trip together through Austria, Switzerland and England. In 2005, they went to America to visit Link while he was working on the cruise ships out of Miami. They took a cruise with him through the Bahamas and flew to New York, San Francisco and LA. They broke up the long-haul flights by calling into Hawaii for a stopover in each direction. In 2012, they again called into Hawaii in both directions when they went to Canada, this time with Auntie Wendy. And they did the classic train trip through the Rockies and again visited LA. A few years after that, they were back there again doing a coach tour through Eastern Canada, the US, and down through Washington and New York. Nothing in there. It is, mate. Their best trip ever was in 2014 when they went to Europe and took one of those river cruises from Amsterdam down to Budapest. While they were there, they went and experienced some of Holland's finest hospitality from Tink's family in her hometown of Veenendaal. Somewhere in amongst this, they managed to fit a safari trip into southern Africa as well. They've done a couple of bus tours in Europe and a cruise through the Greek islands. In more recent years, they decided to take Link, Tink, the kids and I on a big family holiday each year until the kids left school. We all thought that was a brilliant idea. We had wonderful trips to Bali, Port Douglas and Surfers Paradise. They started to score some cheap business class airfares with the help of one of Link's good mates, Bernard, who, by the way, travelled here from Brisbane last week to be here to help Link through these difficult days. Thanks so much for that, mate. Link, Dad and Tink and I really appreciate your efforts. Business class travel isn't a good comfort to get used to, because when you contact Bernard, leaves the airline business, you either go back to cattle class for your long haul flights or you cough up the dough for your lay flat plane seat. I don't know how she was ever going to cope with the economy class Jetstar flight all the way back to Hawaii for our next planned big family holiday. But it didn't matter because COVID came and we never did make that trip. Also in these later years, Mum combined her passion for travel with her other great passion, golf. She went on a number of go golfing tours to all sorts of places, sometimes with Dad, sometimes with friends, and sometimes with her beloved golf-mad sisters, Auntie Coralie, Auntie Wendy, and Auntie Cynthia. Auntie Lexi's interest in golf didn't quite stretch that far. Why would you go past the Stanley turn-off, is what she would have said. They all even had a girls-only trip to Hawaii a few years ago as well. Over the past 20 years or so, Mum's had numerous trips to Sydney to visit Link, as Raquel referred to, sometimes with Dad, sometimes by herself, sometimes with all of us, and sometimes, once, a treasured trip just with Raquel. I don't reckon there's a single upmarket or trendy new restaurant or bar in Sydney that they haven't been to. Mum loved nothing more than to go to a fine restaurant, preferably one with a comfy lounge and a view, for a pre-dinner scotch and coke or a cocktail or two, and a nice glass of Chardonnay at the table. It didn't matter how big the portions were, just as long as there were at least 3 courses. A classic act by Mum would be to get excited as a meal arrived and with a big smile on her face, take a quick little taste of a beautifully presented dish and go, She just loved it. Mum and Dad have stayed in the flashest hotels all over the place, the Shangri-La and the Shard in London, Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, St. Regis, Fontainebleau in Miami, Beverly Hilton, the Ritz-Carlton and many, many more. Mum travelled to 43 countries in her 67 years. What an achievement. Thank you, Mum, for being such a loving, caring and giving wife, mother, grandmother, mother-in-law, friend and sister to many. Sister and friend to many. You've lived a wonderful life and we're all very privileged to have been part of it. Thank you.
My question is, how do you fit it all in? Oh my goodness. Fantastic. I'm sure there's lots and lots of stories that you would like to share. When we're having afternoon tea, which everyone is invited to, gather around and ask those lots of questions and tell your story of your connection with Rose and the family. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of oohs and ahs and laughter, because just hearing that, what a fantastic journey. I'm going to invite a really good friend of Lincoln, Mr. Bernard Mills, to come, and he's going to share some thoughts. And as he's coming, Clint has already said that Bernard has flown in from Brisbane, and the family really appreciate and thank Bernard for, and his partner Chris, as well as Sergio and Michael, for making the effort to come and support Lincoln. Sergio built up a close relationship with Rose on his visits to Sydney and to see Link, and they shared many wining and dining experiences together. Rose loved the cards and the messages Sergio would send her. Thank you.
I had the privilege of spending the last 6 weeks of Mum's life with her at our family home alongside Dad, her devoted husband. I'd lay on the bed beside her and holding her hand, we'd chat of this and that, and there were often moments of silence. After all, what could we possibly say that was of more value than that precious time? Last week I told Mum that I'd written her a letter, an attempt at least to express the words that were in my heart. Then, just a few days ago, my mum asked me to read it to her, and on one of those mornings, beside her on the bed, I did so. I'd like to share that letter with you today, the day we mourn and celebrate my mum. The 18th of January 2022, my darling mother. Where do I even begin to say what you mean to me? There are simply no words that would come close to doing so. There's no gesture grand enough, and even if we had all the time in the world, it would not be long enough. Over the years, I've often compared my journey to yours. You experienced so much of life's greatest milestones at such a young age. By the time you were 38, you'd married the love of your life, lost both your parents, and raised 2 boys to head out into the world. A position I can't imagine for myself even now. In some ways, our paths have been very different, though in others, quite similar. What's vastly different is the opportunity you've offered me. You've encouraged me to be bold, to act with courage, and to follow my heart. Thank you for accepting me for the person that I am. There's not been a single moment I haven't felt that acceptance. You've always been on my side and had my back, even when it may not have been easy to do so. You've always embraced me, my friends, and my life, and for that I'm truly grateful. Thank you for our family, the family you created and nurtured. You are the heart that has taught it to love, the voice that has brought it reason, and your soul its guiding light. You are both its bedrock and its beauty. Remember that day in 2011 when you and Dad were visiting me in Sydney? We were having breakfast down at Circular Quay, overlooking the harbour. It was July the 18th, your birthday. I presented you with a simple photo frame wrapped in pink. In the frame was a poem, and you read it, and tears welled in your eyes. That poem expresses so much of how I feel about you and our relationship. It stands more a testament of my love for you now as it did when I wrote it those 10 years ago. There's someone in my life, a woman whom I know. She's the sun, moon, and all the stars, wrapped as one and tied with a pretty bow. Every moment I have known her, she's been at my side, close enough to guide me, far enough to have me try. Her love is given freely, without condition or demand, her expectation of me in return to be the better man. I've in my life her voice and touch, her words and embrace. To say her, with these each journey I undertake and every trouble face. To say her spirit is young and free would not do it just. Her soul is much more than this, her gift to all of us. Never are we parted, though often the distance great, from when our first time started, a bond to never break. This someone, the woman and the subject of my prose, is in fact a lady, my mother, known as Rose. You are a remarkable and inspiring woman. I'm in awe of your bravery and your courage. Even as you stare down this time of trial, you do so with dignity and grace, the dignity and grace you've demonstrated all your life. Using every ounce of strength and all your will, you make the best of every day, even though it's the hardest thing in the world to do. I can't imagine how you must feel, but I do know it's my privilege to be spending this precious time with you now. I struggle to comprehend this world without you, but somehow I feel you will always be part of it. beside me on my travels, and across from me at lunches of souffle and Chardonnay, just like so many times before. Be at peace, Mum, knowing I'll be okay. It will take time, but eventually I'll be okay. I want you to rest, knowing you are my best friend, and that you are loved, and that there has never been a prouder son of his mother than I am of you. You're the sun that shines so bright, you're every star that twinkles white. You're every rainbow that spans the sky. For my mother, you will not die. Instead, your soul will be set free from the weary body be, and still never shall we part, not while I've a beating heart. You will be each tear I weep, till all eternity ends in sleep. Your son.
Thank you, Bernard, and thank you, Lincoln. Beautiful. If I look around the room, I can see a variety of cross-section of ages, and I'm sure those online will be the same in the rooms they're in. What can I tell you at a funeral that you haven't already heard? A proverb from the good book says this: as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Jesus said, from out of the heart the mouth will speak. You can always tell a negative person by what they say. You can always tell a hurtful person or a fearful person by what they say, because out of the heart, well, the words come. You can always tell a hateful person, because eventually it'll come out of their mouths. On the opposite, you can always tell a generous person, because it'll come out of their mouth. You'll always understand and know that that person is loving by what they say. Whether it be a forgiving person, whether it be a welcoming or accepting person, a caring person, these attributes, these qualities come from the heart, and they're spoken. And obviously they're demonstrated as well. I'm super confident that you're here today because Rose is in that second list and not the first. I'm super confident that you're here today because you have experienced what's been in Rose's heart and what's come out of her mouth. Whether it be all of those positive things I've just read or a whole lot of others that the list is not long enough to put on paper. And she's demonstrated those qualities. You've been impacted by generosity, love, forgiveness, care. She's welcomed you. And again, these qualities, these attributes, these behaviours have come out of the heart of a person, and they're spoken, and you've experienced them as well. Side note, Rose wasn't perfect 24/7. None of us are. We all make mistakes, and I'm sure Rose has made plenty in her time here as well. However, I want you to listen again to Rose's heart that's impacted Raquel. Grandma, you suffered through 2 knee replacements, 2 hip replacements, and multiple arthritic problems to be finally struck down by the big C. Never once did we hear a word of complaint or even shed a tear in front of us. You always had the attitude, if you can't control the situation, just get on with it and play the cards that you're dealt. I believe you're the strongest woman we've ever known, and we love you endlessly. Someone else said once, I'm so much more than the bad things that happened to me. That sounds like Rose. She was so much more than the bad things that happened to her. Out of the heart, the mouth will speak. As a person thinks in the heart, so is he or she. Friends, I want to encourage you today. I want to challenge you. In fact, I want to stretch you today, this afternoon. Be known for being hopeful, hope-filled, full of hope. Be known for being full of love, full of grace. Be known for being full of acceptance, full of forgiveness. Because people not only hear it out of your mouth, they'll experience it because it's sitting in your heart. If there ever was a time that hope is needed, that love is needed, that grace is needed, it's today. And the hope I'm talking about, it's not, I hope it doesn't rain. I hope this fella hurry up and finishes. The hope I'm talking about, it's a certainty. It's a guarantee. In this life and in the life to come. I'm not afraid to die. Because of the faith I have, the hope I have in Jesus. I am hope-filled. I have a certainty and a guarantee in this life and the life to come. It's so much more than I hope it doesn't rain. From what I know of Rose and Jeff and their family, they are full of hope, being hope-filled. And being hope-filled has created opportunities for Rose to bless people, serve people, impact people's lives, impact your life. And that's why you're here. You and I are here today because you and I have heard it and experienced it because it was sitting in Rose's heart. I'm going to invite her sister Cynthia to come and she's going to share some thoughts. Thank you, Cynthia.
I haven't got very many.
That's okay, that's fine.
I haven't got very many thoughts, but I just couldn't let Rose go without a little quip from me. Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is our officiator did say that Rose wasn't perfect. Well, I'm here to tell you she was perfect.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
Thank you. So having said that, I'd just like to say I am so sad to farewell my beautiful, caring sister, Rose. I have been so blessed to have had her in my life. Always caring, loving and kind, what beautiful memories you leave behind. When we meet again at the pearly gates, don't forget to have that cheap shardy ready. If there is no cheap stuff up there, could you just flick me a text and I'll bring one? Make sure you take your mobile phone. Would you make sure the phone's there, Jeff? Thank you. All my love, Cint. And if anybody would like to spell Cint, don't bother going to spell check because it won't say C-Y-N-T.
Thank you, Cynthia. That's good to know. In a few moments, I'm going to close the service with a prayer and a blessing. After this, a song's going to be played, chosen by Rose, If Tomorrow Never Comes. Everyone is welcome, as I've already shared, to stay for afternoon tea. But before then, everyone is welcome to follow the family outside. And if you'd like to place a flower in the hearse, you're more than welcome to do so. And then returning and coming back in here for afternoon tea. As Rose would always say, it's Scotch clock. The golf ladies are going to also provide a guard of honour, and so you might like to make your way outside as we're coming to the close. Could you please stand? In one regard, we're saying our last goodbye to Rose. It's true to say that her body has stopped working, but her life will keep living while you as her family and friends keep reflecting Rose by how you live your life. Remember Rose, honour her, celebrate her. Jesus, thank you for meeting with us today. I ask that you walk with us into the days ahead, comfort the brokenhearted, strengthen the overwhelmed, refresh the weary, and give courage to us and fill our hearts with peace and hope. A Gaelic blessing. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the gentle night to you. Moon and stars pour their healing lights on you. Deep peace of Christ, the light of the world, to you. Thank you.
Sometimes late at night I lie awake and watch her sleeping. She's lost in peaceful dreams, so I turn out the light, lay there in the dark. And the thought crosses my mind, if I never wake in the morning, would she ever doubt the way I feel If tomorrow never comes, will she know how much I love her? Did I try in every way to show her every day she's my only one? And if my time on earth were through, she must face this world without me. Is the love I gave her in the past gonna be enough to last if tomorrow never comes? 'Cause I've lost loved ones in my life who never knew how much I loved them. Now I live with the regret that my true feelings for them never were revealed. So I made a promise to myself, say each day how much he means to me, and avoid that circumstance where there's no second chance. Tell her how I feel. If tomorrow never comes, will she know how much I love her? Did I try in every way to show her every day she's my only one? And if my time on earth were through, she must face this world without me. Is the love I gave her in the past gonna be enough to last if tomorrow never comes? So tell that someone that you love just what you're thinking of if tomorrow never comes.